Welcome to LastPass and the importance of password management. I'm Doug Sokolowski, the account manager for LammTech. Now, before we get started, we do have a couple of housekeeping items to review. Everyone is muted, so there's no background noise. There is a Q&A window that's available for use for any questions or comments that you may have. In addition to introducing our guest, I'll also serve as the moderator. Our LammTech marketing coordinator, Courtney Hicks, will also get some questions or comments to our presenter to ensure you get your answer, as well as George Love. There'll also be time available after the webinar to ask questions, and we'll either answer them during the webinar or set up a time to answer your specific questions. We do, from time to time, have some polls, but we'd like to see your questions or thoughts. Contact information will be provided at the end of the webinar for you to get in touch with us at LammTech. In addition to our live webinar, we'll also provide a link to the recording should you want to review that, what you learned today, or want to share your knowledge with another person in your organization, or even want to show someone you may refer LammTech to. Without further ado, again, I'm Doug Sokolowski, the account manager for LammTech. We do welcome you and thank you for your time on today's webinar. Give you a little history and information about LammTech. We were founded by Robert Lamm in 1999 in Sedalia. Robert still serves as our owner today, and we'll be hearing from him as well later. We provide managed services for businesses and organizations, with our core coverage area being between Kansas City to Columbia, and then from Brunswick down to Springfield. But we do service several other states and regions. LammTech aligns IT solutions with your growth initiatives. Our overall goal is to take care of your technology so you can focus on your day-to-day business and stop expanding your problems. Now, we do offer managed services to maintain your security, help desk support, consulting, and data recovery and backup services. One other note before I introduce our speaker, for those of you joining us today that are current clients of LammTech, we appreciate your partnership. We do believe you'll learn more about protecting your business and how we assist with that. If you have any questions on what you learned today and how it works with your specific agreement, feel free to reach out to our team after the webinar is complete. Now, some of you have joined us for our previous webinars. We appreciate your interest in learning more to improve and enhance your business strategy. The last couple of webinars have been centering around how to work in a secure way from remote locations. Today's topic falls in line with that. We do receive a lot of questions about how to securely keep passwords that you may need. Today, we'll discuss a program that assists with remembering your passwords called LastPass. And on that note, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today who will discuss this LastPass program, the owner and CEO of LammTech, Robert Lamm. Good morning, Robert. How are you today?
Morning, Doug. Doing well, and thanks everyone for joining. As Doug said, we've had a series of these webinars where we have focused quite a bit on security and working from home and the whole mobile workforce environment that really has kind of bubbled to the top of everybody's interest and needs over the past 6 or 7 months. And so this is kind of a drill down, if you will, on a major topic that revolves around passwords. Passwords today are more important than ever. The reason is it's all about numbers. You know, if you have 10 users all working in the office, you're managing 10 endpoints, and an endpoint is kind of what we call either like a laptop or a desktop or iPad or things like that. However, when you introduce the need or requirement to work from home, then unless the user or your employee has a company managed laptop or device to take home, they go home and they work from their PC at home, which in effect can potentially double the amount of endpoints that you have. The passwords themselves, you know, why is this such a big topic? Well, we have more devices, more applications, more networks. Think about this: if you have folks working from home, not only do you have double the endpoints, but their home networks they're a network. They have to be managed and or protected. Even if it's just a wireless access point hooked into your internet service provider's router, it's still a network. Think about your home. How many devices are connecting to the internet when you're at home? We have so many internet connected devices. Remember IoT, Internet of Things? So you have TVs, you have Amazon Alexas, you have Google, all the Google devices, Nest and Play and all of those. There's just an unbelievable amount if you go in and you look at the number of IP addresses or devices that are going out on the network. You'd be quite surprised. 80% of the breaches that are happening today are typically from weak, reused, or stolen passwords. And so that's why this conversation is so timely, because passwords themselves create a great risk. As an employer, even before the pandemic, we hear about having a remote workforce. That's been a topic that gets bantered around quite a bit. You read in the news and the business journals where there's statistics supporting working from home and the increased productivity. There's the same arguments that are made against it. It really boils down to the type of organization you are, how you sell, what makes your revenue, what generates money. That influences a lot on whether or not remote workforces and working from home is a viable option for you. However, when you think in terms of people who are home because of quarantine, they're sick, they've got a child that's sick, or school's out and they don't have a caregiver during the day, there's a number of reasons why you still have what we'll term as a temporary remote workforce, where you have someone who may work 1-2 days a week, maybe a couple days a month. The idea is creating flexibility for people to be able to work from home. Since all of the recent events in the last 6 to 8 months, it's now becoming a bit more mainstream. The question that should be on everyone's mind is, how can you manage the access to your business digital assets, your accounting? How do you guard against breaches on that? If you have an insecure network today, people can walk in your office and access your network if it's not set up properly. Now let's extend that out to people who are working from home. What kind of risk does that raise for you? A favorite of mine, everybody has a guy, the one who has the affinity for computers, fully understands them. Hey, I'm going to help you out. I read about this, and this device or application works really great, and I'll just install it for you, and it'll be great. It'll make your life wonderful. We call those folks shadow IT. If they're left unmanaged or unsupervised, they present a tremendous risk. A perfect example is we've had occasion where we've had clients, we've had prospects that we've gone in and performed network assessments and discovered wireless access points that the owners of the company didn't even know that existed, because somebody just walked in, they popped them on the network, and next thing you know, everybody has great speedy internet access to their iPads and their tablets and so forth. And we were called in because their network was running slow or their internet access was running slow. Some of these devices, that are purchased, are actually routers. And what happens is that they cause conflicts on the network. But the irony is the things that were put on the network, this device that was put on the network to extend flexibility to users, actually caused more harm, because the interruptions that were caused on the network weren't consistent. They would work fine for a few days, and we'd go in and troubleshoot. Everything would be fine, and we would come back, and after a period of time and some potential costs, it was discovered that this device was plugged into an open network jack that was live, and it was broadcasting an IP address. And so there's a lot of issues that can be caused by that. And a new one it's not necessarily so new, but it really is kind of coming up to the forefront is the fact that today more than ever, the workforce is a revolving door for many companies. You know, much of it can be attributed to millennials. They get the blame for everything, it seems like. But I think that even more so now, it's due to employment challenges and job losses, people being laid off, trying to find new things. Companies are downsizing. Question that I would ask you is, in your organization today, do you have a written current process for whenever you do find yourself in a position that an employee leaves? Let's not worry about the circumstances just yet, but you have an employee leave. What do you do if this person has a username and a password to anything? What do you do to make sure that all of those usernames, passwords, and accounts are either closed, shut down, disabled, or made manageable by someone else? That's a huge thing. We have come across times over the years where we've worked with people and gone in and performed network assessments, network audits, and discovered users that were dismissed or had left the organization a number of years prior, and their account was still active on their network. And if this individual has anything to do with vendors that have online access, online portals to log in, place orders, or do whatever, oftentimes people forget about those and they're just left dormant, and quite potentially, depending on the circumstances of what that departure was, it presents a big risk to your company. So you need to have, as part of your offboarding process, and you need to keep current on what your users have access to. And of course, that's a very daunting challenge when you start thinking about the number of usernames and accounts, passwords that you yourself manage, and then think about all the employees that you have in your network. Another reason that this is so important is that we have seen, and it's been documented by some other vendors as well, that sometimes it's 6 months before the average, before you even find out that you've either had a breach or a vendor or someone you use has experienced a breach. Sometimes you don't find out at all. It depends on how big the organization is. Think about in the past, the news articles you read or the commentaries you come across where Capital One or Amazon or any number of online identities companies have announced that they had a breach. But now think about this. So it's September. I think we've all seen where so-and-so Kohl's has announced that they experienced a breach in their online system in February of this year. February. So what do you think happens from February to today with your username and your password? So another series that we're going to be do probably in the future is actually on dark web ID management, where we set and talk about a service where we monitor for that. But there's marketplaces out on the dark web where you can buy usernames and passwords for pennies that are part of these breaches. So if you discover that a vendor that you're working with has had a breach, whether you have been contacted by, if you see it in the news, you need to change your password just to be safe. 53% of the people out there don't change their password, even if they have been, even if they're aware that that company has been breached. And it's typically because one, oh, I'm just a little guy, they're not going to come after me. Or two, it's just too much trouble. I just got that password committed to memory and I don't want to have to go through it again. And three, the big scary one is, I use that password across 20 different accounts and now I'm going to have to learn something different for that one by itself. So what I'm trying to do is build a little bit of a case analysis for you to understand why password managers are a very good tool to have in your arsenal to protect things. Another reason is employees, and I think this number's low, type out their credentials 154 times a month. Now think about that. 154 times. Now maybe it's the same one a dozen times and across the one, but the point being is there are a lot of passwords out there. People spend 36 minutes a month just relating to just passwords. And the big kicker is 76% of your employees experience regular password problems. And a lot of those password problems are caused by LammTech, because we're trying to incorporate best practices by encouraging you, and at the direction of the management of the employee or the companies that we work for, to implement these changes to cause periodic password changes and to make them complex and so many other things. So we're making things difficult for employees, and that's about any IT provider that is trying to follow the standard. That's what we're doing. The challenge is that the harder we make it, which that's not our intention. First of all, our intention is to make it secure, but we have to have a little bit of buy-in from the employees. And so the harder we make it, then the more times you're going to find sticky notes, spiral notebooks, Excel spreadsheets, notes in Outlook, a variety of different places where people have stored their whole inventory of passwords. I can pretty much assure you that those passwords, that list, is not in a safe place. The second thing I can assure you as an owner, should that employee leave, chances are that list will go with them. So that'll be another thing to be looking at when we start talking about choosing the right product, and why we have chosen LastPass to be the standard product that we use within our organization, that we're starting to implement now that we've kind of fully tested it, and we've seen how it can benefit. So the risk is real. 81% of breaches are caused by reused passwords, and 70% of those breaches begin at a workstation, a laptop, or a tablet. That part is the real eye opener for small business. It's different when you're talking about large companies like Chase and Capital One, and they're the big whale in the ocean, and they're where the hackers are really going to focus a lot of their effort if they're trying to get a just enormous amount of data. But the reason that you see so many attempts at small companies like ours is because we're smaller, we're vulnerable, we have fewer best practices. It's not enforced. Typically, people don't have dedicated security advisors looking at their IT. And so that's the role LammTech is attempting to play. We're working with our companies and our clients to help them develop better practices, but not just telling them how to do it, but also trying to provide the tools in order to make sure that the things are working as we had intended. There's the adage that what doesn't get monitored doesn't get managed. So we've worked on the monitoring aspect with our dark web ID agent tool, that we can see and test and perform phishing tests, so we can tell if the training is working with our users. But one of the main things that we've discovered, that it's not an aha moment for LammTech, it's the industry, and it's been something they've talked about all the time, is that passwords and users are the number one weakness in this whole process. So we've been trying to train people, but it's hard to train people on good password practices when we're asking them to have 150 or 200 unique passwords. It's impossible. not without writing it down. So what we're trying to do and what we're going to talk about today is a tool that will help you be able to introduce this, that we can support it and it can be accepted within your user base. So when we look at this solution, we look at 5 different challenges to meet. It's got to be simple to use. Simple not just for the users, but that we can assist in managing it. You can provide some management if you wish. We need to be able to control it. So if you have your passwords in a repository, that you have limited administrative controls, so people are able to manage these and provide sharing of credentials if needed. The visibility aspect is to be able to see the usernames and accounts that you have set up for your users. And so that way, let's say, for example, in carrying over to automation, if you have a departure from the company, that you would be able to go in and either restrict or change or deny access to the LastPass vault for that user should they leave. So that's kind of the digital version of if they had a spiral notebook sitting on their desk and they decided they had all their passwords in there and they were going to leave, you'd be able to hold on to that, except it's hosted. So another key part of this is that the usernames and passwords and account information is hosted. It's not sitting on someone's device. So if someone leaves the organization and everything is turned off as far as access to that password vault, then they would not be able to have access to it. And then the final component, which is the ultimate goal in securing your identity, is the security part, in which we can make certain that we're limiting the amount of times and hopefully getting to a point of 0 that you're not reusing passwords, that you're using good passphrases, or that you're able to accommodate the requirements of some of the online websites that you're trying to access. An example would be, there are still banks and credit card companies, and you'll see it a lot, where you'll type in a password. You're requested to change your password, and you type it in, and you get the annoying little pop-up that says, does not meet the requirements. You have to have one uppercase, one lowercase, one special character, all these different things. And so you used to sit down with a scratch pad and write it out, or you'd type out until you hit the magic deal, the magic phrase, the magic requirements to satisfy those needs. And that falls back to what we see right here then on the 36 minutes a month related to passwords, because people are trying to figure out, what do I got to put in that works, but something that I can also remember. So when we look then at the security part of it, this tool helps us meet those requirements. But the best part of it is I'll show you in a minute that you don't have to remember. I mean, in my LastPass, I have over 200 accounts in LastPass, and very few do I even know what the passwords are anymore, because I've let LastPass reset those and reset it to the requirements of that particular website, and sometimes even greater. So those are the 5 things that we're going to look at. So this is what LastPass looks like. And again, I'll take a pause right here. If you have some questions, if you will pop those in, then Courtney or George or Doug will try to either answer those, or they will post it to me, and I will try to address it online. So this is my LastPass account. Now, what I have done is since I have so many passwords, I was able to, you can classify your different types of accounts. And so all of these are just my travel accounts. And you can see I haven't been doing a lot of traveling in the last few months. However, when you do go in and access and use it, it will tell you the last time you went in and looked. I happened to go into my American Airlines and see how many frequent flyer miles that I was going to lose because I'm not traveling. But so each one of these is an account that has my username and password. Okay, sorry, had a message pop up. Wanted to make sure it wasn't for me. So the when you go through and you go to an online website that requires you a username and password, if you haven't set up a password and you're creating this account from new, once you save it, LastPass, which is running in Chrome, if you'll see up here in the top right corner, there's a little Chrome extension sitting there. After that's installed and logged into your LastPass account, once you visit a site, it'll ask you, do you want to save this? Is this a place you visit and use that you want to save that password? You answer yes, and it will, if there's a logo associated with it, it will add that to it so you can find it, and you're good to go. So you'll see over to the left the number of different things that can be kept in LastPass. Now this is just a screen grab, because if I bring my LastPass up, I'm showing you everything, and I'd prefer not to do that. And is there a limit on how many sites and passwords they can keep? No, you cannot. There's no limit on these. As I said, I would say you'd be hard pressed to be able to extend beyond their need or beyond their capability.
Rob, we have another question.
Yeah.
When you erase all your passwords from Google Chrome, will LastPass retain them?
Yes, it's completely independent. In fact, when you load install LastPass, it's been a while, and I want to double check, but I believe that there actually is an import feature that will import your existing saved passwords in Google Chrome, and then give you the option to delete those. And I would highly suggest that once you get used and comfortable using LastPass, that any of your browsers, I think most browsers now have the ability to turn off the auto saving of username and passwords. I would certainly do it, because that'll do nothing but cause confusion. And LastPass is awesome in that it carries across a multitude of devices, but then also it can be confusing because Google Chrome does the same thing with your Gmail account. So you just want to make sure that you choose one and stick with it. And we highly encourage LastPass just because of the cross-platform capability and all the other different features with the additional things that can be hosted or saved on that site. So this is an example of, for example, Amazon. I've got 3 different accounts on Amazon, one for our company, one that's a personal account, and one's for an account that I manage for a nonprofit organization. And so I have all 3 of these set up. And if you go to a website like Amazon.com and you go to sign in, you're going to see a little graphic over here. That's the LastPass graphic. If you notice, it looks just like the red one up here in the upper right-hand corner. And if you click on that, it's going to drop down and show you all the accounts that you have associated with it. You choose that account, and then, once you have chosen that account, once you've chosen that account, then it goes ahead and populates with the password associated to it. And if you have to change an account, like let's say the LammTech account they're asking for a change, you can simply click on this little button right here, and you can start the process of letting LastPass choose another account. Once you save that in the sign up or in the change password area, it will automatically update the LammTech account with that new password. Didn't have to write anything down. Didn't have to sit and try to think about what did I do? What did I choose? Did I write it down and did I misspell something? It's automatically saved.
Rob, we've got another quick question.
Yes, yes.
Google Chrome saves passwords as well. Is it not considered secure?
It's not as secure. And one of the main reasons is Google Chrome is going to rely simply on doing just username and passwords, but there's other features like being able to put in, if you have a bank card in there, you can also have secure notes. For example, I have our building is an old bank, and there are 2 vaults in this bank, and they both have combinations to them. Well, I just have a note tablet in here that I created that's bank vault, and it has the combinations for those. I have other passwords like all of our Wi-Fi passwords that are stored here as well. And for example, on your iOS devices, when you connect to a new Wi-Fi account, it will actually save those in there for you. So if you revisit there, sometimes, iPhones, if you do a reset or you reload, those accounts are forgotten. Now those passwords are saved, so you'll have access to them. You can create all kinds of custom items, even social security numbers. In the notes, if you'll notice these little puzzle pieces, these are notes. My wife and I both use TSA PreCheck. Well, I've got our numbers in there just in case somehow it didn't end up, with your airlines, you normally can put those in. We've had a couple occasions where Southwest printed tickets that didn't have the PreCheck number on them. And so I can go to the counter, and of course they'll want to know what that number is. So I can just grab my phone, open up LastPass, and I can read those numbers off to them really quickly. Again, you wouldn't think that these would be something you care about whether they're secure or not, but you sure don't want them to fall in the wrong hands and then have it fall back on you. The same way with travel reward numbers. There's just little bitty notes that you can use. I even have a note in here for 2 guys that I travel with that have all their date of births and everything in case I need to buy airline tickets for them. I don't have to go back to them each time and get all that information to get the right tickets. So again, you can reset passwords, and everything is memorized in LastPass. Again, the beauty of it is that it carries across to your different devices. So here's my iPad. Here's my iPhone. Now, if you'll notice, the iPhone is a little bit different in you have to make one more drill down just simply because you don't have enough screen size. But if you click on all items, then all of a sudden all of these are over here. If you have some that are used a little bit more frequently than the other, then you can make them as favorites, and so that they will show up at the top. And for example, here's George and John's travel info and the bank and our 401k company administration. Well, all of these are very secure. And the nice part of it is that I don't have to worry about if I've left a piece of paper on my desk or if I've left the binder in my desk drawer and I'm at home working like we did for so long. We could still conduct business because I had access to all that information and felt confident that it was safe and secure.
Rob,
Did I see another question?
Yep, we've got a question.
Sure.
The question says, this still appears as though it is a single point of failure. What additional security is in place that makes LastPass safe? If the site gets hacked, isn't that a risk as well?
Absolutely. I will not deny that at all. The LastPass uses a 256-bit encryption, plus by the nature of what they do, it's very secure. I would say it's just as secure as so many other like lending institutions and things like that. So there's always going to be risk. We're trying to come up with a tool that is solely focused on maintaining this type of information and monitoring it. When you start looking at things like Google, you know, Google, while it's stored in your with your Gmail account, those passwords are still on your local devices. So there's utilities out there that can go scan a PC and find those passwords, and even though they have a certain they may have a certain level of encryption of those, the hackers out there have tools that allow them to go in and look at what we call the hash numbers of those and try to reverse engineer those. And so we still feel that this is a more secure way of doing it, as opposed to just being able just having the other. Also too, and we'll cover this later, you also can put two-factor authentication. I don't know if anybody has really heard a lot of discussion, but that's coming up where you can have, whenever I open up my LastPass vault, I actually get a push notification to my iPhone asking me if it's okay to access that. And that's one more level. So even if somebody happens to get the password to the master password to your vault, if they put that in and they don't have your cell phone, they won't be able to get in. So they're continuing to add layers of security. And again, you know, we all carry, most of us carry our phones. If you use an iPhone, and if you have an Apple Watch, actually I get the request to approve that access on my watch. So they do have those multiple layers in there. Google's doing the same thing with their Google app, where you can do authentication. In fact, you can actually use Google's authenticator with LastPass as the two-factor authentication method. So there's a number of ways to set up. What we do is we evaluate when we have a prospect that's looking to use this tool, that we will try to take an inventory of what's kind of the greater percentage of people using mobile devices for like iPhones or Android phones. This will work as well on Android. So we try to get a sense of what people will be using as that secondary authentication tool, should they choose to do that.
Rob, we've got another question, and I don't know if you'll cover this a little later, but they wanted to know what the difference between the free version or the premium version of LastPass is.
Sure. The premium version actually is the one, it has more features to it, and forgive me, I don't have that one completely to committed to memory, but I'm going to cheat just a little bit. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm doing as I'm going to their website. How's that for being prepared? Because I don't know that it necessarily provides the ability for, for being able to go in and share. So for example, the premium allows you to share your password. So I'll give you an example. My wife and I have some shared accounts. And so instead of us trying to keep track of whether she changed a password or I change a password, if I change it in LastPass and that's one of the passwords that I have shared with hers, it automatically updates her device. Another key feature when I do a lot of traveling is emergency access. Since I have so many credentials that are directly involved with my company, that if I have the emergency access set up, that it will then, I have it set up so Jonathan, who works here, is going to get an email and said, you're now an emergency access user. If anything happens to me and they can submit a request, he can submit a request saying, I need emergency access to this, then LastPass will try to reach out to me for a predetermined amount of time. I can make that 24 hours, 48 hours, a predetermined window of time. And if I don't respond, then they're going to consider that something bad has happened to me, and then John will be granted access to my LastPass. So if there's a horrific accident, I'm incapacitated, then our company will still be able to have access to that. Plus, there was also going to be a certain level of dark web monitoring that they're starting to provide. We haven't really, this is a new feature of theirs that has just come out, so we haven't really haven't gone too deep into that. Another advantage of the premium is the ability to do enhanced multi-factor authentication, like I was talking about, where you can either use like a YubiKey, which is a little hardware piece that you plug into a USB key port, or if you're using fingerprint authentication on laptops, it also is the same thing on your iDevices if you have the touch login included. So there's quite a bit of flexibility there that you don't get with the personal version, which is why the first is free and the next is a paid version. Did that answer your questions?
I think so.
Okay. Well, we're 10:43. I'm not going to keep rushing, but I do want to show you a couple more things. I'd mentioned about changing the passwords. So, we'll go back, the steps of signing in. So you choose, this is on an iDevice, just to give you an example. So you go in with your Amazon app and you're going to sign in. It's asked for your password. So then the second thing you'll see is that LastPass is going to pop up and it says LastPass is locked. Now you can set this with a couple different ways. I kind of go borderline to the extreme that every time I have to go into LastPass, I have to use my Touch ID to unlock it. I'm doing that rather than having to type in my password. But once I touch my ID, then my credential, my password is placed in, and I'm ready to log in and shop or do whatever I want within that app. If you go to change a password, when I was speaking earlier about the things that you have to do, and I'm just using the iPhone just to kind of show you the different screen setups and screenshots, but it's the same content. It might just be in a different user interface. But as you can see, you can adjust to whatever the password length is. An interesting, I think, kind of a throwback to the early days of LastPass was that, you talk about trying to make a password that's easy to read. And of course, one of the most overused passwords is password with a capital P and an @ sign. And people thought, hey, that's easy because it's, that's secure, but it's easy to read. Well, so they have easy to read, easy to say, or just all characters. The nice thing about it, as this password is generated, it shows you its password strength. If you have been on a website before and you're updating or changing a new password, you can actually show the history, and it will show a drop down of all previous passwords that you have stored. Again, remember this now, this is what was stored in LastPass. It's not going to go to the website because the website will not display that. But as you start to use LastPass, and if you're trying to use your own passwords here, it will show you what you've used in the past. Our recommendation and what we've found is just, it's kind of a set it and forget it, is we answer all the questions that meet the requirement of that particular website. We tell it we hit the recycle or the reset button here, it will come up with a new password. And if it meets the requirements of the website, we say fill it. As soon as we say fill it and save or continue, LastPass will go ahead and update your password. This is what it looks like on your desktop. This is what it looks like on your iPhone. So similar questions, similar process. And if you need to just generate a password on demand, you can actually just go in and say generate a password.
Rob, we've got another question.
Sure, I'm glad.
Is there a difference between the family version versus the company version? And also, how do you manage between personal passwords and on-the-job passwords?
Well, that's a really good question, and I'll be direct. I don't have an answer for that today because the managed password ability that has been introduced to IT providers is something brand new for us. So we're kind of working through that, and we should have an answer on that. I know Jonathan, our director of technology, that is one key thing because there's probably at least half a dozen of us here at LammTech that are using the family setup right now. And so we're trying to understand what the differences are and how those will work. So if you will bear with me, Courtney, if you will keep track of who asked that question, and we will get back with you specifically on it, but we will also send an email out to the attendees. We keep track of these Q&As. And so on these ones that are unanswered, my commitment to you is that we will have those answers and email those out to you, and then feel free to follow up with any questions.
Yep, I've got that recorded, so we'll be able to answer that later.
Great. So there was two parts to that. There was one about the shared passwords, and then the other one was what was the difference. The big difference is the family password is still a personal to where you as an individual would log in, and you're going to manage. I think there's up to 5 people that can be in the family plan, and but each one of those operate individually, but then they can share passwords among themselves. The company plan sets up the ability for an IT administrator, similar to what you have with your network, to where you have all your users and their passwords, but the IT administrator can then manage those users and set different parameters on those. And so that's why that's a little bit more, I don't like the word complicated, but it's more feature rich, and that it can be managed either by your IT provider or someone appointed within your organization that has kind of a background or understanding of security practices for password management and things like that. Okay. And if there's any more follow-up to that, just let Courtney know. So again, kind of circling back, you'll have the ability. I mean, another one I really like are payment cards, because you can put in your different credit cards, and I know that you can have Apple Pay and all of these different ones. But let's just say you're sitting on a website and you're going to you're going to buy something that's not a routine vendor, so it's not like Amazon where the credit card remembered through your account login. If you go and visit a website and you start to make a purchase, provided that website is actually presenting the credit card information, so LastPass can interpret that as, hey, they're wanting a credit card number here and a billing address and everything, you can right click where that is. You can go to LastPass and you can say credit card information, fill in info. It'll pull the information out of LastPass and populate it. And I'd say it's probably at least 95% of the time I try to use that. It works. Every once in a while, you'll come across a website that might not be coded and not present, like, for example, the billing address in the way that LastPass can interpret it. But boy, it sure beats having to try to pull your card out or going into the other room to get your wallet or your purse. It's right there. So that's another really nice feature. But again, a lot of the things that people try to keep and maintain and do it securely, now you have a single point of access that it's very secure and can be either held by yourself or shared and allow you to function in a more secure world.
Rob?
Yes?
Can LastPass be used for network login?
Today it cannot. What we're using right now is two-factor authentication with a product called Duo, and again, it's an app that runs on your phone, but also can be integrated into like the use of YubiKeys, those little USB keys that you can plug into your computer. but today it is not. It's not able to automatically. I mean, if you needed to remember a password for your network, you can go into the passwords, but I haven't seen that come out just yet.
Okie dokie.
All right. So this is how we see leveraging LastPass, and we're wrapping up. So I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Most importantly, we want to secure your password list. 42% of the people out there have their passwords scattered somewhere. You know, like I said earlier, spreadsheets are probably the most popular after sticky notes. You can probably walk into your accounting person's office, and I bet you if you rifled the desk, looked underneath keyboards, if they have desktop files, you'll find a sticky note with passwords. But one other thing is to avoid reusing the same password or a variation. If you use password today, then 90 days from now, change it to password 1, then another 90 days to capital P password 1. That's bad. You don't want to do that. And that was pretty much the outcome of people being forced to change a password, and it had to be something different. A lot of new or updated applications right now check to see against the previous password and say, no, that's too close. Some don't care. Some think that, hey, that's just the responsibility of the user, so we're not going to worry about it. And then 66% of everybody, they do it anyway. They're still going to do it. So we have to be able to try to encourage some change. A big thing that I referred to earlier is that, you know, your IT professional, they need to have a kill switch. You know, we need to be able to audit what that user accesses and shut off that access in real time in case of an unplanned departure, or even in a planned departure. It's a wise thing to do. I mean, we've discovered places where just to show you how kind of pervasive this can be. You think about physical security and the keypad that you punch to walk into a building to disarm the alarm. We've discovered places that have had 5 or 6 people who've left and they didn't change or didn't turn off their account for their keypad. And even worse yet, we've had them to where they said, well, we're going to recycle the number, and if the login was 1 2 3 4 5, well, Joe left, but now we've hired John. So John, now your new code is 1 2 3 4 5. That is not very secure at all. And so the final thing is we want to become less predictable. You know, 22% people out there say they could guess their significant other's password. I'd say there's a pretty good chance of that because they use sentimental information in their passwords. You know, and I always have to pick on Facebook on this one. You know, personal information can be found by hackers on social media. You know, how many of us and I'm tired of pandemic, everybody is, but when you see on Facebook and people are bored and they say, hey, let's share information about yourself, list the top 10 vacation destinations you want to go to. How many people do you know? Who are your parents? All this stuff. These guys are out there just trolling left and right, gathering this information up and trying to use this to brute force attack your accounts. So my encouragement is to not participate in those, because you really don't know the genesis of where those actually came from. And once it's out there for good. So one final reminder, security and updates, you know, blah, 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 but it is important. Threats still exist. They always will, and there are new ones daily. LammTech does our best to try to communicate if we have some very severe ones. We work diligently in the background trying to create a safe network and encouraging best practices. But the only thing we can do on some instances is just to continually verbally remind you to be aware of caller ID spoofing. That can be anything from the ones we hear about all the time where the sheriff department is calling you to tell you that you're going to be arrested for not showing up for jury duty. And if you don't want to be arrested, give the credit card number to your utilities are about to be shut off. But if you don't want them to get shut off, give us your credit card number. But then you have the more intense ones where people are scoping out who you're using as a CPA or as an IT provider. And it may just call in, hey, we're taking a quick poll. Thanks for your time, and hang up. 3 days later, they call, get someone else. And hey, this is Jim from LammTech, and I think there's a problem with your computer. And hey, who knows? Maybe LammTech did hire a Jim, but we trust LammTech. So we're going to go through the motions with them. That's how quickly things can happen. If you ever get a phone call from someone at LammTech and you're not familiar with who they are, I absolutely invite you to say, let me call you right back, call back to the office and ask if Jim really is at LammTech, and we'll make sure we get you taken care of. Finally, the last thing is email phishing. Please make sure that you are encouraging your people to think before they click. Make sure that they understand what phishing is. We have some past webinars on email phishing. I'd invite you to join and watch those as a group. We also can do some training. We have a variety of methods there that we can provide training, auditing, and management of that that we will probably talk about at a later time as well. So the last thing when you're working from home, choosing the right tool for the job, whether it's instant messaging or chat, video conferencing, business telephones, email messaging, all of these are potential entry points for bad actors. So if you have any questions, or if there's anything that we can do to answer those questions, or if you're looking to do something like that, I invite you to reach out to Doug, and I'm sure he will be more than happy to chat with you. And I will tell you, because I always like to end with a good story. A good friend of mine is online, and he just texted me a reminder of a true event. Most of you, if you're clients, have had an opportunity to talk with our friend Eric. Eric is a very, very 100% German-born individual and has the heaviest accent. And he called a remote site from one of our clients, and the guy who answered the phone heard, "This is Eric from LammTech," and he hung up on him and immediately called his boss and said, "Who is this guy? I think I'm trying to be scammed." So it happens. Give us a call. We'll be more than happy to chat with you. If you have any questions, I'm going to be hanging around for a few minutes. If not, thanks again for checking in and spending the time with me this morning. We're very excited about the opportunity that we have to make things better for your users, make things more secure for you as a business owner. And with that, I will close. And Doug, I'll turn it back over to you and let you wrap things up.
All right, thank you for all the questions that you guys gave us today, and thanks for your time, Robert, here this morning. We do appreciate your time in general to learn about another line of remote and even in-office security through the protection of your passwords through LastPass with our owner and CEO, Robert Lamm. I do remind you, if you're a current client and you want to see how what you learned today pertains to your agreement, feel free to give us a call after the webinar. If you're wanting to learn more about LammTech and our offerings, you can also call me direct at 660-851-7342. You can also email me, which is on the display. Please remember, we'll provide you with a link to this webinar and invite you to also view our previous webinars online at lammtech.com. Again, we thank you for your time, and I hope you have a fantastic day.